Is this the best wheel rim you can get for under $1,000? Simagic have been kind enough to become a supporter of the channel and have supplied me with this wheel to race with, and naturally I'm very keen to give you my opinions on it thus far. But first, I'd like to give you, the viewer, some perspective before we kick off. I haven't been paid for this review, nor do I have any affiliate links or kickback or stuff like that. I just enjoy making reviews, and I try to keep them as obviously observation based as possible so you can form your own thoughts and opinions on the product you're researching. And likewise, all opinions and thoughts on this are purely my own, so make sure you look around before you formulate your final opinion. And guys, a large portion of people who are watching aren't subscribed, so if you enjoyed the video at any point, consider joining the gang. We'd love to have you. Now, to the review. With a diameter of 290mm and a weight of around 1700 grams, this wheel is what most would deem to be the quote-unquote the perfect size, making quick reactions to steering easier, ideal for Formula and GT style racing, although this wheel could be used for just about everything. When you first hold this in your hands, the first thing that will pop out at you is the stunning 5mm carbon fiber material that holds this wheel firmly together. This being amazingly complemented by the huge amount of functionality this wheel has, the wheel looks like it could almost drive by itself. Having 12 RGB buttons, 5 rotary encoders, 4 tub encoders, 6 paddles on the back of the wheel, and just as if that wasn't enough, an extremely well placed 7-way multi-position switch. So you'll have no trouble keeping your car in check with this amount of control genuinely and ergonomically at your fingertips. The 4.3-inch display is sharp, vivid and clean and ready to display one of those many dashes in the Simagic's wheel software. One of my favourite being the one similar to the 992 Porsche Cup car, but there are also so many to choose from: the Ferrari GT3, Formula 1 style, kind of some fantasy ones. There's a lot. Flying around to the back of the wheel is where the theme of an absolute battle station is carried on to the rear, with essentially 6 paddle shifters to work with, 4 being magnetic style, 2 being clutch style paddles. Again, you are given maximum control over your car wherever you put your hands on this wheel. The grips on this wheel won't disappoint. Simagic have gone for the classic silicone grips, which I find very ergonomic, and especially where your thumb wraps around the grip, you can feel the silicone throughout. So there's no seams, there's no sharp bits, there's no jinky metal bits. Your hand really does sit well around this. Setting this wheel up is as simple as taking it out of the box, putting it on your Simagic wheelbase via the QR50 quick release, and holding these 2 buttons together, waiting for a flash, then you're in. In the software, you can adjust how your clutches work, enabling the dual clutch feature. You can customize every RGB light on this wheel, and on the buttons and rotaries and on the front, to even make them flash to match the telemetry leaving the simulator of your choice. I like having the buttons on the top of the wheel flash for ABS, and the pit limiter button flash when I'm pitting, as this visual feedback is not only useful but incredibly immersive. One thing I really like about this wheel is when you're in multi-class racing, you can get the screen to really flash blue, so it's really obvious that there's a car coming. It's not just the blue flag on your screen, but you got some, other inputs to you letting you know there is a faster car coming, be careful. The same can be done with the rev bar above the screen and the side lights, granting you complete control of how the wheel offers the info to you when you need it most. This truly is an amazing wheel, and it's actually very difficult to fault, but there are a few points I'd like to say that could be areas for growth, or things that kind of caught my eye. One issue, and to be honest, this is the only real tangible issue I see rising from the sim racing community, is in the display on the front of the wheel. Would there be compatibility with SimHub, or kind of like the lack of? Personally, I don't see this as an issue, as SimPro offers more dashes than I could ever really use, but for those users really wanting to design and use their own dashes and maybe use telemetry that SimPro doesn't process, this could be a deal breaker. I guess that's not too bad. And lastly, I guess the second thing I'd like to mention is the rubber grips. I'd like to conduct more tests, but I do know that after a while of using the grips, they can attract oils and slightly change over time, which is fine. That's material, it does what it does, but maybe some instructions or tips on how to keep your grips feeling brand new would be useful to help the user understand them better. I'm sure for most, this is a boring point to make, but something I'd be interested in as a long-term owner of the FXC with similar grips, seeing how they slowly became slippier over time. I'd like to learn more about that and how to look after them, similar to Alcantara or suede on wheel rim materials. In regards to the ergonomics, and I mean how your hands sit on the wheel, I do find them good, And definitely there was a high level of attention to detail when it went into this. But although I would like to try a variant of this wheel where the handles were less rounded to allow the hands of the user to sit slightly higher on the wheel and to see how this could help them push and pull and turning the steering wheel. But this is more of a curious observation rather than a complaint. But as a whole package, it's a stunning wheel. This thing will draw the attention of anyone who passes your sim rig, instantly bringing out their inner child, begging to be taken into battle. But the price? Fighting in the red corner, coming in at a cool €850 in Europe. Is it worth it? It's a beautiful wheel, but how do we size it up when looking to part with this much cash? What else is around? For that, we need a reference point, so we can really consider the overall context of its place in the market so we can make a realistic comparison. Now, although the review is somewhat subjective by nature, this part is really subjective and purely an opinion-based comparison from my own experiences, so do take this with a pinch of salt. It's just one man's opinion. Using a similarly priced product like the Moza FSR, which comes in a little under the price of the FX Pro, which one would assume would be a direct competitor of the FX Pro, for me, this works out as a really good reference point because I've tested the FSR and I reviewed the GSV2P, I've had the FXC and I have the FX Pro. Let me just say, I think the FX Pro is a better wheel, in my opinion, for three main reasons. Again, these are just my thoughts. So firstly is overall feel and build quality. The Moza Formula wheel is much lighter, and although it's stunning with the crushed carbon, it has a tiny bit of an underwhelming feeling when holding it compared to a Simagic wheel rim, and features bizarre rough-edged plastic end caps on the ends of the handles. A weird touch for their top-of-the-line wheel rim, but completely understandable, as Moza's gear from what I can see is aimed at the entry-level market, and it is very aggressively priced, so cost cutting is to be expected, but with only €100 in the difference, the FX Pro would be a no-brainer in my opinion. Number 2 would be the shifters. This has its own piece and again is purely subjective, but with the FX Pro's competitor, the FSR, the shifts are incredibly loud, and on the Moza Formula rim, like metal on metal, leaving the user scratching their head as to why would a wheel be left like this. Personally, as I like to race when it's nighttime and I like to record, using this wheel isn't possible without modifying the shifters, which isn't something I'm into doing. And I've seen pretty high level wheels like GSI and stuff, and although they have such a serious action on the shifters, they're not as loud as the Mozas, so they're like unnecessarily loud. Again, just stacking up against the FX Pro, in my opinion, so you're paying a little bit more for the FX Pro, but you're getting a lot more, in my opinion. And number 3, lastly, the rotary encoders and thumb encoders. The Moza has they've used a plastic of sorts for their knobs and these switches, with 5 rotary encoders having a sticker behind it, from the reviews I've seen, it's look of the draw whether they're aligned or not. The FX Pro has its own higher standard, as it should with the higher price now, but they use metal knobs for the rotaries, again on the thumb encoders with no stickers, and backlit icons behind the rotary encoders. This may seem like a small thing, but if you've used the GSV2P or the FSR, you'll know what I mean, as the plastic they've used couldn't be more plasticky looking. And at almost €800, you're not looking to buy a toy, you're looking for a weapon to battle with on track. Now it seems I'm bashing the Moza wheel here. I'm not. It's a cheaper wheel and will obviously look and feel cheaper in generally every way. It also happens to be the nearest thing price-wise and most commonly in discussion for people looking to upgrade to a direct drive system. So these are just my own observations to help you guys formulate your own thoughts on the topic, and maybe help you look out for things that you may not have seen, because I'm sure if I compared the FX Pro to, let's say, the Gomez wheels or something like that, there would be stark differences, or there might not be, but so is the price, so that comparison serves nothing. So to conclude, first of all, I hope you helped. Secondly, if you have any questions, pop them down in the comments below. I'll help you out as much as I can. So it's a cracking wheel, and regardless of what gear you're coming from, if you end up with this wheel in your hands, you'll be hard pressed to not be one happy sim racer. It's an expensive leap, but truly a buy once and cry once kind of deal. With a wheel like this, there's not a lot you won't be able to do when it comes to sim racing. Obviously, if you're a drifter, yes, there'll be trouble, but in general, you can race Mazdas, Formula cars, and everything in between. For myself, I'm going to be using this wheel over the next few months, conducting a long-term review of it. I don't see my head turning anytime soon. And that's props to Simagic's attention to detail and the passion that they put into their products which really come through. So this has been my review of the Simagic FX Pro Formula Wheel. Thanks very much for watching, and see you on track.